Hey everyone, so today I wanted to make a video on Bull Charge. Obviously, it's the hot topic in the community right now. Everyone's talking about Storm's Keep and Le Monarch and Anarchy and Zoetic Lockset and fire teams and solos and, dungeons, raids, what have you. Bull Charge is everywhere right now. So I wanted to make a video kind of going into a deep dive investigation of Bull Charge and its mechanics through the lens of these 9 questions here that I have prepared, which will kind of guide our investigation during today's video. So I've spent the last day or so testing a bunch of different sources and how they interact with Bull Charge, but first let's start from the basics. Question number 1. How much per instance damage does Bull Charge actually do? So that's a good question. Basically, if you stack up to 10 stacks of Bull Charge and you discharge using an ability or Storm's Keep or what have you, how much damage is that individual kind of zap of lightning? How much does it do? Okay, so to answer that question, let's go to the abilities tab. In the miscellaneous row here, we have Bull Charge. It does 43.3k damage. So I'm going to throw up a clip on screen right now of an incinerator snap clip just for reference. Bungie said that the Bull Charges do, I believe, like a little bit more than an ignition here. As you can see, ignitions do like around 35k. So Bull Charges are going to do around 25% more per instance. Now, what about weapons? What is Bull Charge equivalent to when it comes to the weapon front? And the answer is, the closest thing I have to that is going to be Arbalest. If you take a look at Arbalest here, it does 43.5k damage per shot with no buffs, no surges, debuffs, whatever. And so that is the closest equivalent. So it's not too bad, Bull Charge, but it's not terrible. It's not great. So what's all the hype with Bull Charge? Well, first of all, the Flashover artifact mod is making Bull Charge do 2.5 times damage, which is like, that's kind of insane, I think, in my opinion, for an artifact mod to be boosting any damage source by 2.5 times. But regardless, we're going to go over how much the artifact is carrying Bull Charge, whether it'll be good next season or not. We'll definitely touch on that in a second here. And then Bull Charge, the other thing with it compared to something like an Ignition is obviously you can, trigger Bull Charge a lot faster. We're going to talk about whether or not Bull Charge has a rate cap or an instance cap in a second here. But for now, that's all you need to know. Next up for question 2, what's the base damage profile of Bull Charge? Like, what is the DPS of Bull Charge? And to answer that question, well, Bull Charge is something that passively triggers, right? When you think of Bull Charge, you're doing damage with other weapons, and the Bull Charge is just happening naturally in the background. So it doesn't really have a base DPS value because you don't need to spend time shooting a Bull Charge, right? It just happens while you're shooting your other weapons naturally. So the other question then, that would be an extension of this question, is maybe like a Storm's Keep just by itself. How often does it give you Bull Charge, like the stacks, and how much DPS does that equate to? So Storm's Keep barricades, just one of them, in my testing, give you 1 stack every 0.6 seconds, which equates to around 9,400 additional DPS on top of whatever you're doing. Now this neglects any sort of weapon tick damage that you're doing, which will increase the rate at which you get stacks. This is just the passive gain from Storm's Keep itself. So the DPS is not that high. 9,400 is fairly low, as you guys know. If we go to the sustain tab and we go like all the way to the bottom here, you'll see 9,400 DPS is like, it's pretty bad, right? That's like Bleak Watcher where you're like shattering intentionally every time the boss freezes, or like it's a little bit better than just like constantly jolting the boss. So it's pretty bad, right? However, obviously Bull Charge is special because you're not just sitting there waiting for your Storm's Keep to build up Bull Charge, you're shooting the boss at the same time. So a lot of today's investigation will be on, centered around different weapons and how well they contribute to Bull Charge and how much DPS that actually ends up being equivalent to. Okay, so that's number 2. Question number 3, what are the best ways to start up Bull Charge during DPS? Now notice I have 2 questions here, start up versus stack. Now, Bull Charge doesn't naturally just kind of appear on your character when you shoot an enemy with a weapon, right? You need to start it up somehow, whether it's using Lightning Surge, whether it's using Ionic Sentry, whether it's using Storm's Keep. There's a bunch of different ways to stack up Bull Charge. But I would say for boss DPS, the number 1 way is just going to be using Storm's Keep. There is no easier way to just instantly have a stack the second, you start doing kind of damage in front of your barricade. It also works on your entire team, right? I mean, Storm's Keep is just the best option. There's no kind of question here, right? One small trivia thing that I will give you guys, though, is that Well of Radiance, because it converts your weapon damage, if you're the caster, into ability damage, if you have stacks of Bull Charge and you want to get rid of them without using an ability, you can actually just place your well down, and any weapon damage that you do is able to obviously discharge Bull Charge because it counts as super damage. However, it doesn't build Bull Charge, like it doesn't give you X1 from having no Bull Charge, so a little bit debatable on how useful that is, but I did find it useful when I was doing some testing, but it's just kind of a side thing. It's not like the main way you're going to get Bull Charge for sure. So question number 4, how does Bull Charge stacking actually work? Okay, so that's a good question. What actually determines what weapons are good for Bull Charge? So Bull charge, the way that it works is I want you to focus on two parts of this description, right? Number one is it's based on a magazine capacity based counter, right? That's number one. And number two is I want to draw a little rectangle around this as well. So shout out the Destiny Data Compendium. You guys know I love this resource a lot. But the main thing here is basically Bull charge looks for you to deal damage with a certain percentage of your mag, as you can see here. There's some exceptions here because obviously weapons like area denials where you have one in the mag and you're getting ticks like every point something seconds, that would be very OP, right? You would get stacks way too fast. So Bungie has scaled it for certain weapon types like swords, which don't really have a mag. You have area denial GL, stuff like that. You have glaive melees. So some things have like custom scaling. Some things are a little different. For the most part, you're looking for weapons that have very small mag sizes and are able to empty their mags very quickly. So stuff like trace rifles like Divinity and Cold Heart and Aggers and maybe, auto rifles like Sweet Business, they're terrible for stacking Bull charge. However, weapons like bows, weapons like certain GL archetypes, they're going to be very effective at stacking Bull charge because, their ratio of hits versus mag size is going to be a lot higher compared to something like a Div, right? And so that's why, for example, Le Monarch is so good because Le Monarch's poison ticks actually count as bow damage. And so you're basically getting, on top of just the original arrow, every single time that poison ticks, it counts as doing a full mag of damage for this magazine capacity based counter. So that's why you've seen Le Monarch be so good for DPS when it comes to stacking that Bull charge very quickly. Okay, and so we'll talk about that testing later, but that's the answer to question number 4. And number 5, what are the best ways to stack Bull charge during DPS? So this is where my testing comes in. We have a lot of testing here. I'm going to go over some of the hits, and I'm going to go over what I tested, which, some people suspected might be good, but ended up being pretty terrible. Okay, so the hits here are going to be Thunderlord, Le Monarch, Ergo. Wardcliff was pretty interesting as well, I suppose. Rockets. We have, again, Le Monarch. Another question here that some people were asking me, does volatile rounds affect Le Monarch in terms of its ability to stack up Bull charge even faster? It seems like it does. Okay, I tested this twice. I'm not 100% sure on this. It wasn't like super scientific, but I think the results were consistent enough to kind of claim that Le Monarch with volatile rounds, thanks to the volatile marksman artifact mod, it does seem to do higher Bull charge stacking rate compared to just regular Le Monarch. As for the other stuff here, I mean, nothing down here is like particularly impressive. I would say the biggest things here that are the most important are Hezen Vengeance, right? Hezen Vengeance with Pack Hunter. Obviously, rockets have a one size mag, and every single wolf pack with its impact and detonation counts as a hit for Bull charge. So that's also very important. And then also, stuff like Bequest and Gold Tusk. These are also fairly impressive, given that these are actually already mainstream damage values, right? Or mainstream damage strategies. So the biggest thing that I want to talk about here with Bull charge is that a lot of people are trying to min-max generating Bull charge using stuff like Le Monarch, when in reality, you have to realize that, yes, with Flashover, it's like 80k DPS. Just the Bull charge itself is doing 80k DPS with Le Monarch. But after Flashover is gone, or even while Flashover is here, Bull charge is only good if the underlying damage strategy is also very good. Because as I'm going to talk about in a second, there seems to be a limit to how much damage you can get with Bull charge per second. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. Okay, so really what we want to focus on is what is already good for damage that is elevated to another level by Bull charge. And that's going to be stuff like Hezen Vengeance, it's going to be stuff like Bequest, and that's going to be stuff like Ergo, which we're going to talk about in a second as well. Okay, so what are the best ways to stack Bull charge during DPS? Basically, it's going to be these. The stuff that I tested a lot of different stuff here. If you're curious, you can read this yourself, but I tried Hierarchy of Needs, I tried Microcosm, Acquire, Darcy, Grand Overture, Divinity, Fourth Horseman. Anything that's on this list here, it was so bad that it was not worth mentioning here. And the stuff toward the bottom here, like Lord of Wolves, for example, the only reason why I added Lord of Wolves here is because it's like a popular option, and I'm sure people have seen like the solo runs where people use Stormscape with Lord of Wolves. You're probably wondering, is Lord of Wolves any good with Stormscape stacking? The answer is no. But I wanted to include it here just for posterity's sake, I suppose, because people are interested about Lord of Wolves right now and are probably wondering how good it is. There's a lot of options here that are like actually better than Lord of Wolves for stacking Stormscape, but they're a lot less relevant for damage, so I didn't really decide to list them here, right? Okay, next up we have, is there a ceiling to how fast Bull charge can be applied by a single person? And I think the answer is yes. Okay, and the reason why I say this is because I tested stacking 6 Stormscape barricades, just basically 6 Titans, plunking them down, and I would shoot every time I got times 10, and I was getting like 10.9 stacks per second, right? It was basically an entire Bull charge per second, right? And then what I did was, what if I got Thunderlord, which is the best active stacker on this list, I got 5 Storm's Keep and then 1 Ionic Sentry, because Ionic Sentry technically gives you Bolt Charge a little bit faster than Storm's Keep, despite it not having the weapon damage discharge properties. So I did that, and I had 5 of my friends place down a Titan Barricade with Storm's Keep, and then I had Spark of Frequency on, I was Amplified, I had Thunderlord on, and in theory, this should result in 16 stacks per second, around 16 stacks per second, but in practice, I was only getting Bolt Charge around every, 6.87 stacks per second or something like that. So it wasn't as good as I initially thought. And so this drives me to the theory that I believe that while your Bolt Charge is going off, like while it's being detonated, I don't think it tracks the stack sources underneath it that are building. For example, the passive gain from Storm's Keep, the Ionic Sentry ticks that might be happening during that time. And yes, of course, I mean, as you can obviously see here, Storm's Keep does stack. Yes, you will get 6 stacks every, whatever it is, every 0.6 seconds instead of just 1 stack every 0.6 seconds. All of the barricades tick individually and give you stacks at their own kind of internal clock. Okay. Is there a ceiling to how fast Bolt Charge can be applied to a single target? Another good question. Nice question, Aegis. The answer I think is no. I think the internal cooldown, or the internal limitation in terms of Bolt Charge rate, comes from the stacking on the player. It doesn't come from the ability to apply it to a target. And the reason for this is because we had a bunch of people on Wardcliff Coil. Again, I'll show the clip on the screen right now. We had, I think it was 5 or 6 people on Wardcliff Coil, all shooting at the same time. And everybody's damage on the wipe screen and on the health bar looked about where it should be. So it didn't look like Bolt Charge was getting eaten just because certain people, were not we're all triggering Bolt Charge at the same time, if that makes sense, right? I will say so. Another kind of piece of evidence here that Bolt Charge, there's a limit to how fast you can have it applied by a single person, is that when we were shooting all this Wardcliff together with 4 allies and Spark of Frequency, there was some drop off where you weren't getting as many stacks as you might expect. Wardcliff gives allies near you Bolt Charge stacks when you hit 2 rockets, right? Or when you shoot 2 rockets. So because of that, I thought Wardcliff would stack up a lot faster compared to just like if you were solo, but it just wasn't as good, right? You can see that they're very close together. It's like 3.5 stacks per second. It was basically 1 Bolt Charge every single shot, by the way, with Wardcliff Coil. Whereas when I was with 4 allies that were near me that were also shooting Wardcliff Coil, the stack count doesn't actually go up that much. And I get some excess stacks from my allies, having lingering rockets after my rocket is done being shot and my Bolt Charge goes off, but it's not as many as you might think, because just by myself, I'm able to get 10 stacks per shot. But my teammates, they're only giving me like an additional 2 stacks every volley, or like additional 4 stacks every volley. So, there's definitely some sort of a hidden limitation here where while your Bolt Charge is being discharged, you can't receive more stacks. That's my theory, at least, with what's going on. Okay. Then the ultimate questions that are kind of the conclusion of this investigation are, how much DPS does Bolt Charge actually contribute? How much does it actually contribute? Well, if you're using an optimal strategy, which is basically anything like up here, right? Anything up here in the 26 to 38k range, you're going to be contributing realistically 26 to 33,000 extra DPS per person in your fire team, which let's do some napkin math. Let's just say 30,000 DPS for the sake of argument here, right? 30,000 DPS per person. Let's say you're doing a raid times 6, and that's over 1 second, and a rally barricade lasts 20 seconds. And let's say a DPS phase it's probably like 30 seconds, but let's say DPS phase is 20 seconds long, right? That's an additional 3.6 million damage. So this is with Tractor, by the way. These numbers are all assuming Tractor. That's pretty good, right? That's pretty good. That's like, 3.5 Nova Bombs, 3.5 T crashes, something like that. Maybe a little bit less on the Nova Bombs. Some of these options here, right? If we go to the Sustain tab and we go ahead and take a look at some of these options, right? Let me actually go ahead and zoom out here so you guys can see a little bit better. But some of these options like swords, right? If we scroll all the way up, Ergo swords especially, right? Their damage is going to be elevated a little bit more just because of having this Bolt Charge option, right? So I do think, a Bolt Charge is kind of an evolution on Arc Soul. That's kind of my conclusion, right? Before, people always ask me this question in my comment section. Hey, Aegis, if I'm on a Warlock and we don't need a well because we already have a well, is it worth me running Arc Soul for my team and instead of like something like Needle Storm? And will the Arc Soul from my team, will that contribution outweigh the downside of not having a good damage super, right? Is that like something I should do? And my answer back then was generally, I mean, you can go either way. It's kind of a neither here nor there type of thing. Arc Soul over a long phase with all of your teammates receiving the buff and all of them having their own little arc buddies, it does kind of outweigh a damage super over a long enough phase. And Arc Soul, we were already on the fence on Arc Soul, and Arc Soul is all the way, sorry, down over here if you're giving it to your teammates. 6.5k, right? And we're saying that Bolt Charge can give, this is without the artifact by the way, can give 30k extra DPS per player, right? So 6.5 versus 30k. So this is basically, 5 times, better than Arc Soul really. And already, again, Arc Soul was kind of on the fence in terms of whether or not it's better than a damage super in the long term. So definitely worth bringing after the artifact is gone. I don't really think I need to tell you how good it is with the artifact on. I mean, it's 2.5 times better than something that is already outweighing damage supers. And the plus side is Arc Warlock has bad damage supers when it comes to burst damage, right? Obviously, Chaos Reach with Geomax is nice, but it's still going to be lower DPS than just shooting your weapons if you're shooting optimal weapons, right? However, Arc Titan on Storm's Keep can run Curus. You don't even need to run a special exotic for your barricade to give you Storm's Keep and give your whole team Storm's Keep, right? So the fact that you can run the best damage super on Titan, on maybe the second or third best kind of subclass on Titan in terms of just having Storm's Keep available to you for damage is great. It's great. So, I mean, I don't think I need to tell you this, but, Storm's Keep is really good. So what does this mean for the DPS economy? Obviously, it means you should have one Storm's Keep Titan. In places in raid and dungeon speedruns where you would formerly run maybe a Strand Titan, right, on Tractor or something like that, it might be worth just throwing them on Storm's Keep and just having Tractor, right, on that player and just having them shoot like Lost Signal or something. And, I don't know, it's a fairly easy way to just buff your team for free. Obviously, having more Storm's Keep, there's some diminishing returns because it'll help you reach this cap. And once you reach that cap, you're not going to go much higher than that. The other thing I will say is that this boosts Ergo swords into the stratosphere above regular swords. So as you can see here, regular swords, obviously wolf packs are generated very quickly by swords, and you only need 2 hits to get 1 stack of Bolt Charge. And so, regular swords, you get 15, 17k a DPS added on top of your damage. With Ergo, it's like 28k, right? So let me go ahead and I'll show you some clips on the screen right now of Telesto Ergo and Caster, Polaris Ergo going absolutely crazy, building Bolt Charge. So yeah, pretty excellent stuff from them. I do think, Le Monarch I think is a bit overrated because its base DPS is very, very low, right? Combining these two together, you get like 70k DPS, which is like pathetic. But I'm thinking Thunderlord looks excellent. I mean, Thunderlord is already capable of giving you Bolt Charge by itself, but with Sparker Frequency and Storm's Keep combined, definitely an excellent damage option. In terms of total damage, this boosts its total damage by a ton. But yeah, Ergo looking a lot better. Warcliffe base DPS is already, again, too low. So while the synergy is there and it's kind of quirky and cool, this total DPS here is not going to be very good. So really good for rockets, really good for pack hunter swords, really good for Ergo in particular because, for example, Telesto and Caster, all of those damage ticks that are going on in the background, just like Le Monarch Poison, count as sword damage, right? So every 2 ticks there, you're going to get an additional stack. That's pretty much all I have to say for Bolt Charge. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. This DPS is, all these values are available in my boss damage spreadsheet, which I'll link in the description as usual. And yeah, Flashover is pretty OP. And I'll see you guys when we do the duality breakdown.